Do you sometimes end up with muddy colours on your painting or hard edges that you don't seem to be able to shift? Then this video is for you. Hello, I'm Jackie Smerdon. This is Dunnock Studio. Welcome to my channel. This channel is for beginners. I run very long form videos. I try not to jump cut, so I take you through in real time. If you like fast videos, this channel is not for you. No question is a silly question, so please pop them in the comments if you think of them, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. Dunnock Studio is located in the heart of Norfolk, UK, and I'm all about art with a heart. I try and share my skills that I've learnt over 20 years ago. In 2022, I took the City and Guilds Adult Learning Education Certificate, so I'm able to try and show you how to do things that I've learnt. And my aim is to get you way better than me. Blending. What does that actually mean? In watercolour, it could mean anything from combining something, transitioning from one thing to another, changing something. There's lots of different views on what blending actually means. In this particular video, we're going to focus on blending colours and blending values or tonal values and see if that helps you to understand blending. I'm going to be using just some simple colours. So I've got alizarin crimson, cadmium red, a French ultramarine, lemon yellow, cadmium yellow. If you haven't got any of those, please do not buy anything special. Just use a crimson type of red, a bright type of red, some sort of mid blue that's not too greeny, then a nice lemony yellow and a nice warm yellow. You can see the difference between all of those. It helps you to start understand the colours you've got in your paint box that may not have any names on them. So over here you can see I've got a lemon yellow and an ultramarine blue. One of the basic things you could say about blending is when you pull two colours together in your palette, you're mixing really, but another way of looking at that is you're blending colours together. And there we go, I've just made a green in my palette. So if you were doing this on your paper, the first thing you would do is just to dampen the area that you're going to work on. Blending in watercolour really does mean using the water. It's quite hard, if you're, especially when you're learning, to do any of this without damp paper. If your paper is dry, it's very much harder, so I do suggest using a damp brush, or if you wish you could use a sponge applicator or something similar. Any sort of sponge will do the trick. So then from there onwards, with a clean brush, I'm using cold pressed watercolour paper, but this is the back of an old painting, so nothing special. I'm going to drop some yellow, this is a lemon yellow, onto this side. And then on the other side, after I've washed my brush, I'm going to pop in the ultramarine blue. Now this paper is damp, so you may already notice that the paint is creeping over between the two. But with a clean brush that you've squeezed out in the water, you can help to bring them together just by linking them together. Each time you do this, just be careful your brush doesn't get dirty. You need to drop more colour in just to enhance that yellow a little bit more. Feel free to do that whilst it's still damp. This is one of the tips you have to work out by experience. As it starts to move over towards the blue, this is when you also see colours that push into other colours. Watercolour is a learning curve for everybody, so don't ever think you're never going to understand it, because even people who are very experienced in watercolour learn something every day. So again, I've squeezed out my brush, it's clean. You can see the yellows travelling across here. Just going to tickle that colour, not with a wet brush, just with a damp brush. And I'm now starting to get a blend between the two. It's very subtle. And then I'll leave it alone to do its own thing. So that's a wet on wet coloured blend that we've sort of encouraged with a brush. But we started with wet or damp paper. Okay, let's have a different way of blending. I've got my clean brush, just make sure it's clean. Going to dampen my paper. Again, this is a cold press watercolour paper. It is not expensive and it's the back of an old painting. So feel free to practice on paintings you've done before. If you don't want them framed, use the back to practice things like this. So that's now equally wet all over. Just let that settle. This is one of those things that's very hard to show you on camera. Is when I first put the water on, it's very shiny. Then it starts to lose its shininess and it starts to go with a sheen. And it's that soft sheen in between wet and dry that you're looking for. It sounds very complicated. It really isn't. It's all practice. And I can't show you because the camera just really doesn't pick it up very well. So I'm going back into my lemon yellow now. This is another way of blending those colours so that we get a green. Now I'm going to start with the lightest colour, which is the lemon yellow. This time I'm going to go right across. You can see that the paper is still nice and damp. So as I put this on, there's no hard edges forming in the middle here. I can move it around really easily, cleaning my brush in between applications, picking up my ultramarine blue, making sure it's got enough water in there. You can't quite see that. I'm just trying to so you can focus on here. So this time I'm going to randomly drop the blue into the yellow. So you can do small marks like that. You can go bigger bold marks. Just need to make sure you can drop it in without it being, that's better, okay. Pop it in and let it do its thing. Another trick to watercolour, if at all possible, pop it on, leave it alone. It's not easy. We're all tempted to go back in and fiddle. Now, of course I could fiddle. I could get my brush and mix that all together and that would be fine. I would get a green, but it wouldn't be half so much fun as watching this travel across the paper. So earlier I did one where that travelling carried on. The blue has crept up into the yellow. If you can see that, it gives you a way sometimes of creating foliage or maybe background trees. If you can see that, the blue has crept into the yellow, all sorts of interesting patterns. So that area is a green colour. So this one may do the same, may do something completely different. So this one we had two colours side by side and we blended in the middle with a brush. This one colour and drop some colour into it. Let it do its thing. Okay, let's look at tonal blending now. So I'm getting my brush, let's use this area here, dampening down my paper. I'm using just some drawn out boxes, but you don't have to do this. You can just go free across the paper in any shape you like. Please don't think you have to copy me. Some people like working in boxes, some people like working in circles, some people just go ad lib and do their own thing. Whatever you find useful. So that's settling into that paper now. Now I haven't left myself much room here, but I'm going to try and show you a graduated wash, which is using just one colour. So we're blending the colour away from the strongest area to a lighter area. So my water is settling into the paper. I'm mixing up a nice creamy mix of ultramarine blue and just still waiting. Now down here you can't see, but this is almost dry down here, whereas this is still damp. that can be a problem. It isn't an issue, just work with it and learn to accept that watercolour does its own thing. Nothing you can do about that. So I'm doing a nice rich creamy blue down there. Right, so cleaning my brush, squeezing it out. Remember, you don't want any more colour. Taking my just slightly damp brush, I've just squeezed the water out. This is still damp, so I'm okay. I can keep going. Start taking that edge and taking it away from the beginning of where the paint was started. You might have to reload, squeeze out, clean that brush, squeeze out, keep taking it as far as you want to until there's no more pigment left. Now again, I'm working flat, so if I was on a tilt, you'd get more of an effect. Let me just show you that. Let this one carry on. So we've softened this edge here and let that one blend away. Just a quick bonus, see this little blob here, just still full of paint. If I leave that, that will cause what is, whoops. If I leave that, that will cause what is known as a cauliflower or a bloom. You just pop your brush that's squeezed out next to it. You can sort of suck it up. You do leave a mark, so don't worry about it. But taking away the majority of that big blob of paint will hopefully stop that happening. I don't actually mind if it does. So here we go. Let's just do a really, really quick one. I'm going to pick up my paint. I'm not even going to wet the paper this time. Let's see how well we can do it. It's on a tilt. Put my paint stripe across the top. That's it done. Washing out my brush. So you can do it with dry paper. You just take the brush away from the paint edge. Keep going. Can you see how it's draining down? Now it's because the pigment over here is quite a bit stronger than on the other side. Work with it, don't worry. Just softening what I had over there, and you keep going. This is really nice for skies. That sort of background washes maybe for if you've got a busy foreground, a sky or something like that in the background. So even though I didn't dampen my paper first because I had a good bead of paint at the top, I was able to drag it down and away. You just see it soften that whole edge, whereas this is a hard edge, this is a soft edge. Graduated wash. And the tone between that side and that side, this is dark and this is light. So you've gradually changed it, although there's a little bit of a line there because I didn't have it on a tilt, whereas if you have it on a tilt, it's a little bit less of a line. So it's not an exact science, and as you can see, as I've done it, some of them will work better than others. So just have a go and see if you can blend away the edge and make the dark tone into a lighter tone. It's much better with blue. So why is any of this important? Well, there's two leaf shapes here. So slightly changing my colours, I've now put some cadmium yellow in my palette. So if I use some of that cadmium yellow and pull in some of the blue, it's not very strong, let's make that a bit stronger. Just pop some yellow in there, there we go. You can see I've made like an olivey green. The cadmium yellow is a warm yellow, so it's changed that green that we've been making to a nice muted green. Won't confuse you with colour mixes too much today, but just suffice to say cadmium yellow is a warm yellow, which means it's closer towards red than a yellow lemon yellow is. Therefore, it dulls it down. So the green is duller and not as zingy than the lemon yellow. If you have a colour wheel and you've got a green, the red is on the opposite side. So if you mix the opposites on a colour wheel, you will dull down and go towards a grey. So that's why that's a duller colour, which is a really nice colour actually. Now let's paint that in a different way Again, these are damp underneath, not too damp actually. It dries very quick. You have to check if it's not still damp, dampen it again. Some of you will have heard of cotton watercolour paper. The reason why people buy cotton paper, which is a lot more expensive than cellulose-based paper, is because they like doing this sort of work. So if you end up enjoying blending and you think you're going to do lots of soft work, then realistically you're going to end up with cotton paper. But don't go too mad too soon. Just see how you feel first. You can always add water again if it's drying out. So this time I'm popping in the cadmium yellow onto damp paper with that soft sheen. Look how much brighter that is. It's the same yellow I used in that mix. But this time I didn't mix it. I'll just put the yellow on. Now let's pick up that blue. Let's see what happens. Let's just drop it in. The blue is quite strong. It's going to compete with the yellow, so it's going to be a bit darker than this because of the way I'm working this time. Just drop it in there. Wash my brush. Now I can leave it like that. If I feel like it, I can tickle it. I like the round brushes, which is all I've used in this video. I just like to tickle the paint around. Whilst it's damp, you can do whatever you like. When it starts to dry, that is the time to stop. So if I don't like some of these fuzzy edges there, I can just use the brush and pull those two colours together. You could even try and just drag them out a little bit, suggesting some leaf veins, but generally you'd put all that detail on later when this is dry. So that's now mixing quite nicely, and it's a little bit more interesting to look at than this one, but this one is a nice soft background effect, so it depends what effect you're trying to create. So how could I use this in a different effect of modelling, shaping an object? So here I've got a little round shape, gone back to my lemon yellow now, just popping that round here, and I'm going to go back to my palette and pick up some of the pre-mixed lemon yellow and ultramarine blue, which is in the palette. So I'm dropping a green in this time. I don't want the harsh edges of the blue mix on this particular one. And then going back into my paint, and this time I am picking up the blue and just dropping that along the bottom here so it can blend up into the green above it. You can try and work your way around an object to suggest that it's got some form. So that's a little lime that's still got a bit of yellow on the top. Again, if I'm not sure that that's enough, I can go back in with a squeezed out brush, not a wet brush. Just tickle the edges together. Got a bit of a puddle of yellow paint there. Now I don't stretch my paper, and you might get the same problem with a bit of what we call cockling, where your paper goes up and down in troughs, hills and troughs, or valleys, hills and valleys, shall we say. But you can see what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to tickle the darker paint around to create the illusion. It is completely an illusion that this is a spherical object, or in this case a lime. Give you a little bonus here, squeezed out, and let's try this one, squeezed out, completely clean brush, squeezed out, pull off some of the paint and create a nice highlight. Easy. Doesn't work always if your paint is still very wet because the paint runs back in, but that's worked fine. So I'm now going to leave that. I've got some lovely trails of greeny blue pulling up into that top yellow. I'm going to leave it well alone because the whole point of watercolour is to let it do its thing. So there we go, I've got a little line there. Again, I'd go back into this later, I'd add a darker centre where this little end of the stem would have been, or the flower end, and then I'd add a shadow underneath. But we can't do that until it's absolutely dry. I could add the shadow, but don't want to confuse you. So we've got a leaf in here. Let's switch our colours and try another one. Going to switch the colours again now. I'm going to use cadmium red, the warm red, cadmium yellow, the warm yellow, and some of the lemon yellow we used earlier. Let's just check our colour wheel. If you haven't got a colour wheel, you could check my channel for mixing your own colour wheel, working out how to use it, or buy your own, which does help when you're planning a picture. So I've just showed you a yellow, a warm yellow, and a warm red. They're all on the same side of the colour wheel, and you all know if you mix red and yellow together you get some sort of orange. So I'm safe to use those colours because they're adjacent on the colour wheel. First of all, I'm going to just check my wet leaf, which is still a little bit wet to be fair. So because I've got all sorts of shapes going on in the paper and it's going dry in some places and not in others, you can use a nice squeezed out brush just to mop up some of that water. Rub it on a clean towel. You're just trying to beat the watercolour game, which you're never going to manage, but you can have fun trying. The beauty of watercolour is to let go. Enjoy the process. Don't try worrying about the outcome. And sometimes something beautiful will happen. And yes, you can use techniques. Yes, you can spend hours practicing them. But it's more about playing with the colours and the water and seeing what happens. In we go. So picking up my lemon yellow because I feel like I need a cool yellow somewhere here as well. Then I'm going to just pop my brush straight into the warm yellow because it's yellow and yellow, so there's no problem with that. And we know that all these colours work together, don't we? So we can just keep going with this idea. Pop that around here. Remember, yellow is weaker than red. Red is one of the strongest colours in your palette, and you'll find that out quite quickly. Now I am going to wash my brush because I don't want to contaminate the red, and that will sort of not help you to see what happens. So the red is now on my brush, cadmium red, and just let it go. I've still got nice damp paper, it's still working, doing its job. We know that these two mixing together are going to create an orange. It's up to you where you put the red, any way you like. Pop some down in the stem. The stems are generally going to be a little bit in shadow, so you don't want too much of a light colour there. I'm going to mix it up again and just drop a little bit of crimson in that we had earlier, which we haven't used in this one. So we've got a little bit of lemon yellow and a fraction crimson just for fun. There we go. So it's now starting to blend. You can see this is inexpensive watercolour paper because you can see the grain there, which is the moulds that made the paper. And moulds can be flat or they can be rollers, all sorts of things that leave an imprint on the paper. So this paper isn't a particularly good one, but it's fine for this sort of piece of work where you're just playing with getting things to merge. If you pick yourself up a beautiful expensive piece of Arche watercolour paper or Saunders Waterford or something like that, great, have some fun, but it does cost a lot of money. You might want to wait till you've done a painting and then use your offcuts. If your painting is sort of one-sided or something and you cut a bit off because you cropped it, those other pieces can be used for this sort of thing. So any inexpensive watercolour paper is going to do a nice job. Now this is merging and doing things all over the place. So I'm quite enjoying the fact that I can still just grab my brush if I want to and tweak it with that lovely fine point. And these brushes, any round watercolour brush will do most jobs for you. That's why they're a good one to start with. Just a round brush, not too big a head on there, enough of a belly, which is this bit, to carry the paint and the water, but not so much that you get overwhelmed when you're trying to paint. So that's working quite nicely. A nice maple leaf or something similar that's starting to turn. And let's just go back into what we did beginning over here where we blended. So you can sometimes, if you want to, blend away an edge like that. You'll see this in a lot of watercolour paintings. So the stem has now become part of the background. You can do that on the leaf as well. Just damp brush. Look at that go. Isn't that gorgeous? Now, you will either like that technique or you will hate it. It's entirely up to you. Some people like to merge their paintings with their background, and this is one way of doing it. I'm literally just softening the edge there, letting the paint travel away from the main image. If you start something like that, look how strong that one is. You don't like it, damp paper towel. There you go. It's gone. There's another quite strong one there. I do like that. I'm going to take it off anyway, just to show you how easy it is to take it off. You can get your brush squeezed out and just take some of it back. Let's take that one back again. Keep your brush clean and just squeezed out. There we go, got nice effects there. Suddenly your painting is coming to life because you are blending the harsh edges away, softening an edge. And that's it. Going back to this little fella here, this little lime, just going to pick up my ultramarine blue. It is dry now, I can feel it's dry. I might pick up a little bit of lemon yellow and just drop that in some way, shape or form to try and suggest there's a stem in there. That may be all I need. And using the same two colours that are in the lime, let's put on a shadow. So we come under here where it's going to be darker. I've got my blue with a little bit of lemon yellow mixed in. I haven't changed the colours. I could do, but let's just keep this one simple. There's some sort of shadow, and then squeezed out brush, soften that away. Blended away the shadow. See how effective that is? Much better than a harsh line. That one's done. What to avoid? Here's my palette again. I've had the blue and the yellow merging here quietly on the palette while we were busy doing its own thing, which is lovely. Sometimes palettes become works of art in themselves. I kept the warm yellow slightly away from that area when I was working in a separate area. My lemon yellow, which was here originally, you can see how it's got contaminated because there's blue around it. I started a new puddle when I wanted a clean yellow. And then my reds are over here completely separate because reds are very, very strong. So I've just dampened a circular shape, nothing special. Let us put in the lemon yellow, which is a nice clean colour, nice and zingy. We could be painting anything here, it doesn't have to be a thing, it's just a nice circular shape. Then I think I need a little bit of that blue, so let's put my ultramarine blue back in, so you know that those two will make green, like so. You can pull them around. And then we decide we're going to make some changes and pop a red right in the middle. So beginner's tip, check your colour wheel. Red and yellow, even though it's a lemon yellow, will make some sort of orange. Just clean my brush and tickle that paint around. It's going to be not as bright an orange as if we'd used a cadmium yellow, which is warmer, but you can see it's making an orange. Check your colour wheel. Red and green, oops, are opposites. What's going to happen if I pull that red over here and that green that's on this side into there? Now you can probably already see I've got mud. This is when artists tell you a painting is muddy. It's put my glue back in, try and get it better. Blend it again, let's see if it works. No, it's just a blue mud now. So the idea of showing you that is that be aware if anything is opposite on the colour wheel, anything orange and blue, green, yellow, green and red, violet, or red and green, anything opposite will actually grey down. Why is that? Well, in the middle we've got a red. On this side we've got a yellow. Over here we've got a blue. So what happens when you mix three primaries together? You get a muddy grey. Now grey can be really useful in paintings of any sort, but if you don't plan it, it's a very dull muddy colour. It's not what you want at all. So if you're mixing your colours and you're going to end up with three, then you know that you could end up with mud. So keep it simple, keep a colour separate from another colour if it's going to be on the opposite side of the colour wheel. That's really a little bit more advanced than some of you may be, but it's worth being aware of it right at the beginning. So if you put green next to red on any painting and they blend together, that's fine, but you might not want the grey that results. If you want your colours to be clean and shiny to start with, then try and avoid putting red and green together. But later on we can show you how adding a tiny bit of red to green is a way of muting it, making it more natural, and that's really, really useful. So there's nothing wrong with a grey muddy colour, but you have to plan it and think about what you want. If I keep using my brush now, that's going to completely turn grey. So I won't do any more with that. I hope that was helpful. We've had a look at blending colours, we've had a look at blending a value to make darker to lighter colours. Some of the problems that we encountered, because problems happen to everybody, including me, is you overwork the paint, where did here where we've got this muddy colour, you just keep working it, it starts to make a mess of the paper if you go too far. We could have added a little bit too much water in places where we ended up with the colours pushing back into themselves. If I just show you just here, can you see that pushing back in, the yellow's going that way? That's called a bloom. Now I think that looks really nice, but if you don't like that effect and you'd rather be in control of everything, that's something to be aware of. We also did the dirty muddy colour. Now that's because I put red and green next to each other, which include all three primaries. It can also happen if your palette is too messy and you haven't separated your colours enough. So feel free to clean your palette whenever you need to. It can also happen because your water is filthy and you haven't changed it. A good way to avoid putting dirty water on your paints is to have separate clean water. I use a pipette, but you can use a brush to pop into your paints when you're mixing a new colour. Use clean water, not your dirty brush water. That's just how I do it. You do not have to do that. It's entirely up to you. So try these techniques either in your sketchbook, on a spare piece of paper, turn your paintings over and paint on the back to practice this sort of thing. Have a little look at my 5 basic techniques video if you haven't already seen it, which also includes some of this work here. A still life, for instance, would include that idea there, and you can use it in a multitude of ways. Wet in wet blending is fabulous for the sort of experimental artist who likes to keep everything very loose. But it's entirely up to you. So do let me know in the comments which one of these you liked or disliked. The sky one over here, as you can see, didn't work very well because I was working flat. And the one I did over here worked quite nicely because I had it on a tilt. So if something doesn't work first time, try it again. Don't be put off. I could have redid the whole video, especially to show you a good one of those, but there's no point in that because then you're not learning. I'm learning every time I do this, and I hope you are too. If you found that video helpful, it would be really great if you could put a like down below and maybe a comment, just to tell me what you'd like to see next, how you got on with the blending techniques, anything else you'd like to ask. It's no such thing as a silly question on this channel. Happy painting, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.